Yeah, it's finally here. Been a few years since the first game and about 3 since Miles came out, so let's just hurry up and find out what they did to combine the best of both worlds, or improve on them after all these years. This is Combat Overview. Here we go over the general controls, the main mechanics, who or what we use them on, and then seeing how it all comes together. Okay, since this isn't the first Insomniac Spider-Man game I've covered, I'm gonna just skim over the real basics so I won't repeat myself too much. Kinda similar more or less. There's some differences we'll get into, but I'll try my best to just look at what's new here in the sequel. If you want a more in-depth look, then watch my Morales video to fill in the blanks. And after watching this, I'd really recommend go check that one out to compare the two. So there's punches with unload combo, hold to launch, reposition the air by jumping off him which sends him flying, or the new option by holding jump near him to stomp him into the ground so hard having him bounce back up. Also anyone below will step back a bit, and you can dodge into him now while in the air to reposition while staying close, which leads into the same slam attack to bounce. Now you can swing kick and press triangle to lift him up, which is new for more juggles, then the web strike to close the gap, not as layered as web of shadows, but it gets the job done. Or you use your web shots, still limited and recharge after some time. Holding triangle will spin him around for some crowd control. If really close to him, can kick him into any direction, or jump off of him to push him into walls, getting him stuck that way too. Now you can press either triggers to slam him to whichever side, or press both of them to lift them up and then slam him down. A bit more options to mess with them when they're tied up this time around. Onto defense, perfect dodges are still here, and jumping can get you out of tight spots to reposition that way too. And they added a parry, giving some powerful attacks afterwards. And I thought it was okay. It's the same thing I mentioned in Web of Shadows, but I don't feel like Spider-Man needs this. He's all about mobility, so perfect dodges is more than enough for him. And spoiler, we play as Venom and he has a parry, which makes sense for him since he's more of a brute and can't move as well. Plus it gives them distinct playstyles on how they approach enemies defensively. But Venom only gets a total of like 15 minutes of actual gameplay. So yeah, so much for that. Looking at the HUD, got our health on top and the segments underneath as for our takedowns to instantly knock out an enemy with full iframes, or use one to heal yourself. You can hold R1 or press a face button to use any of your limited use gadgets, only 4 this time per Spider-Man. I do like how the lower amount lets them have their own hotkey for easy access, but they're the exact same for both. Holding R1 instead and pressing face button will use your cooldowns. We can swap skills now in the menu, but again they're not too different. All specials on circle will do some sort of AoE or crowd control. X are all launchers, triangle is a rush, and square is a forward attack. Pretty cool it's here, but don't expect custom move lists between the two. Now it's not just Miles who has a sub meter for a powerful attack. Peter has his own version called Symbiote Surge, giving you a damage buff to all your attacks, added tendrils for more range, and will now do automatic takedowns. Not a new moveset, just extra flair. When it comes to enemies, to me they took a step back. Yeah, they added some new factions. Basic street thugs will swing up close or shoot from afar. Sandman up close or shoot from afar. Hunter, same thing. At least they had the one enemy that made you think a bit, because they'll lay traps with mini explosives in your current spot to keep you on the move, or they'll toss this electric web above you to limit your juggles. Like a hunter, they'll try to corner you, and if you're not quick to adapt, then you're going to get overwhelmed. But that's the only new solid enemy. Even symbiotes have the same straightforward approach, having far off shooters and up close swipes, but nothing too different. They're a bit more agile, being able to avoid your attacks more often, but gadgets and skills can make quick work of them. Kinda has this one size fits all solution, and what makes it worse is no combat arenas. We have those Mysterio ones, but they like to take control away from you and are more focused on gimmicks, which is fine, but why can't we have both? There's Craven hideouts for straight to the point action with no interruptions, but for some reason they're not replayable, which is very strange to me. In Spider-Man 1, you can revisit Fisk's hideouts, demon warehouses, and Sable outposts. Let you hop back into the action with these in a great way to focus on certain enemy types. So why can't we do that here in the sequel? It's just less replay value in comparison to removing options. Bosses here took a step back as well. In Miles Morales, you were able to combo them for a good while, using your entire kit to create solid 1v1 fights. Web of Shadows lets you do the same against multiple bosses. But the two, you'll get a set amount of damage done before the game takes control, having them escape no matter where they are. If you're in the middle of a combo and are trying to find creative ways to keep them in this loop, it doesn't really matter. The game will force them out to follow the track they built for you. There's some neat stuff here. Mr. Negative does some well telegraphed vertical and horizontal attacks to either sidestep or jump over, but you're gonna notice something pretty quick between all the bosses. They'll do this 1-2 combo into an unblockable attack or an undodgeable, where you're forced to parry it. Lizard does 2 basic swipes followed by either one of those two. Symbiote, Spider-Man, same thing, would do an attack you're forced to dodge or forced to parry. Same for Scream, 2 basic swipes and we either do the undodgeable or the unblockable AoE. Even Venom at the end of the game has the same setup. Kraven isn't half bad because he tosses out mines for you to avoid, cloaks to mix you up, or tries to snipe you down. But even then, he still does the same combo as everyone else. It's pretty formulaic. And compare that to what we just saw in Web of Shadows, really showing off multiple key mechanics in those boss fights. Also, they don't reward creativity once you do open them up, leaving no room for you to get creative with the combat in a deeper way like Web of Shadows or Miles Morales, where you can just go wild. They had it solid before, so why would they simplify this amongst a few other things in the game? And that's Insomniac Spider-Man 2. It's alright. And to say that about a sequel we've been waiting 5 years for is pretty underwhelming. There was a few hiccups here and there that we really had in their past 2 games. I let this side with Web of Shadows because it had a shoestring budget in comparison and way less time to complete. And even then, they came through with innovative ideas the best they could, wherever they could. While Insomniac Spider-Man is funded by Sony of all things, they had a few years to develop a sequel, building off 2 whole games as their base. Didn't really seem to do much here with that. Added a glide to help explore the new larger map, but they took out web slinging challenges in the process. We have these glider ones, but they kind of keep you locked in on the right path with no issue, even with a 0 assist. Honestly, Cat Out of Hell had way more involved flight challenges. You actually had to manage your speed, learn the route a bit, and use your extra wing flaps when necessary. Here in 2, they're kind of simple. You don't have to route Vance to gain height if needed. Don't need a dive to build up momentum that way either, or weave between the environment in interesting ways. As soon as you're in the wind tunnel, it's pretty much played for you and doesn't have you interact with the glider's actual mechanics, so they don't use it to the fullest. Out of the symbiote suit, but Peter and Miles are given the same exact tools. Even Web of Shadows had more distinct playstyles between the 2 suits. And for a sequel, having both of them playable, having both of them on the cover, and that tagline of greater together, co-op was on everyone's mind. Felt like that was the natural progression to things, but that didn't happen. We couldn't even swap between them on the fly mid-combat when in the same room, even though they had the duo takedown animations from Arkham Knight. Which brings up something else they dropped the ball on: characters. They decided to sideline the biggest guest in the game. Because remember the first teaser a couple years ago, getting us hyped for Venom? I'm sure we all thought about Ultimate Spider-Man, maybe we'll get to play as Venom for a good amount, maybe there'll be exclusive bosses and a few missions all as Venom. But nope, they instead doubled down on MJ, having okay styled shooter sections. Most people didn't really care for these in the first game, but they were brought back at the cost of cutting another character short, who could have added a new spin to things with this different moveset. Which we already have that character in the game to give us that unique playstyle. Venom. They actually made him playable and gave him a decent enough move list. But nope. He was a huge selling point and we play MJ more than Venom for those gameplay switch-ups. Kinda backwards. Makes me wonder why even go to the trouble of making him playable if you're not going to use him too much. Sucks too because he has the basic attacks, the leap, grab, counter and all. But it's only in that one mission. And what makes it worse is that we can't even play as Venom in any of those combat arenas, since those don't exist. And even if they did, we can't play as other characters in them. We can only play these gimmick arenas as Miles, so it's even more limited. Overall, they played it safe and didn't really make this huge installment, plus there's a few downgrades compared to the past games with less content. No traditional combat arenas to replay for some arcadey fun. Web swinging challenges were completely replaced. Boss fights were oversimplified and cookie cutter. Venom is underutilized even though they hyped him up as an important part of the game. Could have pushed the envelope further with co-op or at least swap characters on the fly mid-combat to really make 2's gameplay stand out. Yeah, to me this does not live up to the 5-year wait, and this tagline of be greater together was kind of wasted with this one. Since I mentioned it, go play Web of Shadows and Miles Morales instead if you haven't. Those are pretty good.